Conquer Local.
Come on, George, I'm happy to be here.
I help leaders go from anxiety to authority under pressure.
And then let's go and get it.
It's an ecosystem.
The hardest part here is going to be getting me to shut up on this one.
Conquer Local with Vendasta, hosted by George Lee.
This is the Conquer Local podcast, a show about billion-dollar sales leaders, marketers leading local economic growth, and entrepreneurs that have created their dream organizations. They want to share their secrets, giving you the distilled version of their extraordinary feats. Our hope is, with the tangible takeaways from each episode, you can rewire, rework, and reimagine your business. I'm George Leith. On this episode, we welcome Rana Kordahi. Rana has worked in a variety of sales roles in industries like construction, recruitment, employment services, real estate, timeshares, education, and software. For the last 10 years, she trained and coached thousands of sales and non-salespeople in sales communication, prospecting, pipeline management, and the ever-popular cold calling. She's trained hundreds of consultants at some of the big four consulting firms like KPMG, PricewaterhouseCoopers in sales and influence. Rana has also spoke for TEDx on sales. She was featured as a top 10 female sales coach in 2020 by Yahoo Finance and was also featured as a top 15 sales experts to watch in 2021 by the Australian Business Journal. Stay tuned. Rana Kordahi is coming up next on the Conquer Local podcast. Rana Kordahi joining us all the way from Sydney, Australia. Rana, welcome to the Conquer Local podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, George.
It's great to have you on the show.
I'm excited to be here.
It's great to have you on the show today, and I want to learn more about you. We did cover some of the bio in the intro, but I always like to have our guests, from their own words, tell us a little bit about their background. So Rana, could you give us your background? It says here, a 20-year career in sales. So I'd love to understand a little bit more about what some of that background entails.
So I started in sales very young. Obviously, first in retail, telemarketing, then I went into B2B sales, then recruitment. Then I worked in something called employment services, which is government-funded disability employment. And that was the hardest sales job because you had to actually sell people to employers. And it was usually people that were unemployed for a long time or had disabilities. And then eventually I started my own business doing sales training. And I still sell. Even at the moment I have a salesperson, but I still say to her, like, don't take the whole pipeline. I need some because I need to continue practicing. Otherwise I would lose the craft of making cold calls.
Well, before we get into a little bit about the Selling Academy and more about you, you touched on something that is interesting. I've been a part of some conversations this week with some leadership groups, and they're saying, you know, salespeople won't follow a leader that can't do. Do you agree with that?
I absolutely agree. And I think, like, for example, if I'm telling people you need to do this and you need to make calls and things like that, and you're not doing it yourself, or even if you've done it but you're out of practice, then I think it's almost like you're I don't want to say, maybe hypocrite. What's the right word to say?
Well, hypocrite, I actually have used that term. But it's interesting because if you're not in the sales business, I don't know if you get it. Like you just don't. It's one of those businesses that we can see an imposter coming a mile away. It's hard. And I think it's also encouraging for young sellers to know that, you know, I'm way older than you, but doing it for a long, long time, that, you know, we still cold call. We'll still send 20 text messages to get the attention of a prospect. We will follow up with a customer at 10 o'clock at night if that's what it takes to ensure customer success. And I think it's important for them to see that, because you can go watch a multitude of, you know, YouTube videos, podcasts, read books, and everybody's telling you what to do. But you know, I feel that true sales leadership, you got to be able to show it, and you got to be able to prove that you can do it. Now, one of the things that I read when we were getting ready for this interview was this incredible 6-step process that you've come up with. And it's a part of the foundation of your learning when you're out coaching on sales professionals. So I'd love to understand that. Let's unpack that 6-step process a little bit more.
Okay, so usually when I go into organizations, specifically when it comes to, because my specialty is employment services or non-salespeople. And a lot of the times they don't want to do anything to do with sales. So the few step process I do is like, number one is I get them to identify the differences between a trusted advisor, a consultative sales approach, and a pushy transactional salesperson. And I say, okay, make a list, like how would a trusted advisor speak? How would they behave? And then they listen, they tailor the message to the customer, they care about the customer, they care about the customer success. So that's number one. Know that you are a trusted advisor or become a trusted advisor. Once they know that they're not, the sleazy 1990s pushy salespeople, and they don't have to be, there's like this whole burden that comes off their shoulders. Number two, I get them to identify the impact that they're making when they make a sale. So whether it's the impact to the customer's life or to their own life, whether it's they're making commission or whatever it is, or even that job satisfaction, or even helping their colleagues keep, I know it's harsh, but keeping the jobs in the organization, because without revenue, there's layoffs. So just think about the impact. Every time you're making that call, you make sales, you are creating jobs. So that's number two. Number three is change the story you tell yourself before you pick up the phone. Like, what are you saying? I hate sales, I'm bad at sales, or the customers hate salespeople. It doesn't matter. Maybe it's true, but just change it and just brainwash yourself into more empowering beliefs. Number four, change your physiology. So the way you walk, the way you breathe before picking up the phone. Number five, expect rejection. It's part of the game. It's part of sales. And number six is develop mastery. So model excellence, do courses, read books. And the only way you can really learn is to practice and get on the phone or whatever, go out and get rejected and just analyze what you did well, what you did not do well, and what you can do better. So that's in a nutshell, because I tried to explain it in 2 minutes, but I don't know how that long that took.
No, and what I'm so impressed by is the simplicity of it and the way that you explain it, so that any sales rep, regardless of whether they're junior or they've been doing it for, like, those 6 pieces are pieces that everyone needs to remember.
Yeah, it's, I think sometimes people do it unconsciously, but I think working with enough people that are not confident or scared to get on the phone, I just started to, or even like meeting many people, and I was just like, okay, what are they doing? What is it that they're doing? And I just kind of put it into 6 kind of things that they do.
So when you are analyzing this, and you said something very interesting at the end of your delivery on those 6 steps of the process, is there also is a component of teaching the sales rep the ability to have that out of body moment and kind of do your own adjudication and becoming self-aware of how you are delivering those 6 components. And that's such an important part of the growth, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So, being aware and being self-aware of how you're delivering, or even your thought process of what you think is critical to the success of whatever you want to do.
It's so interesting that off the top, you were talking about trusted advisor, consultative sales approach, which we all know is what good looks like. It probably always has been what good looks like. And then you talked about the flip side of it, which is pushy. And I always go to used car salesperson, but that's not fair to used car salespeople. It could be pushy, any type of salesperson. And that transactional, get the commission, run as fast as you can before they figure out that you've told them lies kind of thing. That really is something that we have to break down in society when people think of sales. Because you and I both know that sales is about delivering value. You talk about impact, you talk about outcome, you talk about having a positive mindset, understanding that rejection is going to be there. But I think when we just are in a group of 10 random people and say sales, they think of the last time they got screwed over by a salesperson.
Yeah, at the end of the day, there's a lot to unpack from what you said, but definitely, you could be pushed in any type of role, whether you are with your spouse, or whether you're selling cars, or whether you are preaching in a church, or you are selling something like a trusted advisor. So at the end of the day, I think like if you go back to psychology, people need autonomy in their choice and they need control over their choices. So if they feel like someone is pushing them into a choice, they either say yes if they're not assertive, but then they get a refund later, or they ghost you, or they just say no and they like resist even more. So they go either that way or that way, from my experience.
So one of the things that I noticed when we were doing the research on your career, and when you go to your LinkedIn profile, we talk about this TEDx presentation that you gave, and I love the title, How to Achieve Anything in Life by Learning How to Sell. And I think any of us that have been in the sales business for a long time realize that everything is sales. The entire world is sales. A lot of people don't recognize that. But I loved watching that presentation. What I'd love to get you to share with our audience, because I think it's probably a bit of a bucket list or a wish of people. I got to do a TED Talk. I've got to do one. I have that. I haven't done one yet. I'd love to do one. So I'd like to hear from you. How much preparation did you do before you gave that presentation? Was there a number of topics that you could have chose? How did you arrive at the moment that this was the topic that you were going to deliver on that very well recognized brand and stage of the TED Talks?
I think I chose it obviously because it was for my career. So it was a selfish choice. Like I could have spoken about many other things that could have had more views and very interesting, controversial, but I just thought, okay, just what is it that is going to help you in your career? But at the same time, I'm also passionate about selling. So it was very easy for me to just talk about it. But I felt like, I don't want to say dumb it down, but I had to make the talk like, I thought, okay, my audience are not salespeople, it's just anybody, right? Mm-hmm. So how can I resonate with anybody that's watching it, and it doesn't matter where they're from in the world, to understand, like sales is important and learning how to sell. And obviously I just gave a few little basic tips on selling as well. Yeah, but also I was quite lucky because I knew someone that worked in that university. And then they just said, we're looking for speakers. I sent them my show reel and it was there. But at the same time, you said about preparation, I think I over-prepared because I've done other talks and I prepared for them and I liked them better than my TED Talk because I felt like it was just too rehearsed, too perfect. And it turned out well, but yeah, sometimes you can be over-prepared. And it was like, oh, okay, it's TEDx. Like this is huge pressure. So
right. So you kind of got in your head a little bit because
I memorized everything I was going to say. Yeah.
It's interesting as I hear you speak about it. We recently did an event here in our building, which was a pitch party. And you get 60 seconds to articulate your presentation to the audience. And there were, we had 12 different presenters and 4 of them had never done something like that before. And, I was one of the judges. Okay. We had a couple of other judges, and our advice was keep doing what you just did because it is that repetition that's going to build the muscle. So then when you get in front of a group of people like that, it's not as intimidating. And the other thing that I think is really interesting in your lead up to the TED Talk was it was networking that got you the speaking gig, which is a big part of sales.
Oh, yes. I never thought about that, but you're right. It's who you know. It's who you know, definitely.
So your website for the salesacademy.net, this is your coaching business. And what industries do you work with? And, we'd like to understand a little bit more about what makes your organization, the Selling Academy, different from other sales coaching organizations.
Okay, so that's a tough question because people, when they ask me that, I'm like, to be honest with you, it's me and the way I can facilitate change and connect with people's emotions to be able to go out and change things. It's not even my content. I don't have anything more special than other sales trainers. And maybe there's others that can even connect with people more. But I have the ability to get a salesperson that does not want to get on the phone, that has the biggest fear, or maybe doesn't really know what to say, like to be excited to get on the phone. That's one thing I noticed. Or they're like, oh my God, like I want to make cold calls and thank you so much for motive. It's like that. Yeah. So I understand people and I understand the change management process as well. And usually I work with a lot of staff in companies that are a bit resistant. But so people they're like, what's so different? What is it that you have? I don't have anything revolutionary in my training. I don't try and reinvent anything. I think it's important also to continue learning. So I still do. So also something that's different about me is I still pick up the phone as a sales trainer. I have a business. I sell every day. I'm on demos like we book at least 4 to 5 demos a week. So I'm on demos. I close. I nurture relationships. And I think I actually learned more about sales running a business than I did even before.
Well, I work with lots of folks that do what you do on a daily basis, and they all have that same narrative that, they got to keep their feet in the game. They have to get on calls. They got to keep you mentioned it. You got to keep the muscle. You got to keep working it, or you kind of lose it over time. And then the other thing that I find is really interesting is that, you are on the ground in a very tough space, like selling recruitment, selling talent. Really, at the end of the day, that's there's big need for it. So I get it. But it also isn't something that, you wake up one day and say, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to sell talent for a living. It's probably not the first thing that you think of when you want to get in the sales business. Is my feeling on that correct? You mean,
so the people I train are recruiters, right? So that's correct. What you're saying?
Yeah. And not the first job that you would pick is to be a recruiter.
Oh, yeah. So... yeah, I mean, the reason I chose that is because it was one of the industries I worked in. So, for example, the industries I started working in were industries that I have done, like sales in, first of all, or I had specific experience in. So recruitment is the hardest because unlike a product where you can almost guarantee 99% you know how it works, a service maybe 95% you know how it works because like whether you send a trainer or a consultant, that they have good results and you will hire them. A person might let you down, so it's 50-50. Might not show up to the interview, might sabotage a job, and so your credibility with the person with the employer is going to be sabotaged. So I think selling recruitment is the most difficult thing you can, in my experience.
So one question then from an expert in helping recruiters do a better job and things like that is, how do you properly set expectations with the buyer? Because that there is this built-in failure rate that exists so that they know that might happen.
Yeah, so obviously you don't want to overpromise. You don't want to lie to them and say everything's perfect, everything's fantastic. At the same time, you can be, as people forgive you based on how much they like you and how much they trust you. So even if you do stuff up with an employer or you send them the wrong person, if you have enough of a relationship and you have obviously helped them and done a good job in the past, they're more than likely to forgive you. And at the end of the day, tell them specifically, don't overpromise anything.
And I think that is great advice, regardless of what you're selling, by setting those proper expectations, building a high level of trust, based upon what the prospect told you. You told me you wanted these 4 parameters. I've investigated it deeply. This person looks like they have them. We'll have to wait and see. But I get it. And it's great that is one of the key components of your program. Now, if someone wants to learn more from you or would be interested in some of your coaching, which seems to be very one-on-one based, and I'm a big believer in that, how would they go about connecting with you? And of course, they will have all the links in the show notes to your LinkedIn profile, your website, and the Selling Academy. Is there any other ways that we could reach out and get more of your content?
Most of my content is on LinkedIn, or you can see it on my Instagram, but I'm trying to remember because I changed the Instagram handle. So it could be, just look me up on Instagram and you'll find me.
No problem. We'll put the right
under my name.
We'll put the right URL in the show notes. Our producer Sully, he'll make sure that happens. But we get lots of requests from our listeners to connect with guests like you, so that they could get in touch with more of your content or reach out to you directly. So we want to make sure that we make that available.
Yeah. So they can email me directly. Rana@thesellingacademy.net. Not .com, .net. So remember that.
Well, Rana, it's a
people,
privilege having you on the show today, all the way from Sydney, Australia. And thanks for bearing with us. We have a bit of a delay in our connection, but I'm sure that it'll all come out awesome in post. That's a line from the
thank you
from the TV business. It'll all come out in post.
Thank you so much, George, for having me. Thank you for keeping your energy up despite doing so many podcasts today. And I appreciate your attention.
Thanks,
and
Rana. Well, have a great day. We appreciate you being on the show.
You too. Thank you.
It was a pleasure speaking today to Rana Kordahi. A few insights into today's episode. She mentioned her 6-step process and how that process is crucial to the success of sales. Despite coaching hundreds of salespeople, she still makes her own discovery calls and demos all the time. She also mentioned that change management is crucial. While she works with a lot of staff that are resistant, she mentions it's important for everyone involved to continuously learn. And lastly, to facilitate change, we must be empathetic with our learners. If you liked Rana's episode discussing learning how to sell, let's continue the conversation by checking out these episodes. Episode 548, Selling with Love by Jason Mark Campbell, and episodes 305 and 306, The 4 Mental Leashes with Jason Forrest. Please subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to the podcast, and thank you for joining us this week on the Conquer Local podcast. My name is George Leith. I'll see you when I see you.
You've been listening to the Conquer Local podcast presented by Vendasta. Tune in next week for a new episode. Guest discovery and produced by Sullivan Adam. Marketing by Rory Lawford, Nicole Lozon, and Sullivan Adam. Executive producers Brendan King, George Leith, and Sullivan Adam. Recorded at Vendasta headquarters on the Canadian Prairies.